We told our son to move out because he's a man and needed to learn independence. Now he owns a house, and we just want his sister to have it since she'll appreciate it more, but he's calling us monsters. My husband and I always believed that our job as parents was to raise our children to understand responsibility. We've never been the type to coddle. Our son, Mason, is 25 now, and our daughter, Sam, is 22. From the very beginning, we wanted Mason to grow into a strong, independent man, someone who didn't rely on others to carry him through life. Sam, on the other hand, has always been a bit softer, more emotional, and I'll admit, we've treated her differently because of that. I don't regret it. Boys and girls just have different needs, and we raised ours accordingly. When Mason turned 20, we told him it was time to move out and start living like an adult. He'd been working part-time and had some savings, and we wanted him to experience what real independence looked like. I won't lie, it wasn't an easy conversation, but it was necessary. We thought that by giving him that push, he'd thank us later, and in a way, he did just not how we expected. Mason surprised everyone. He got a stable job, worked long hours, and after a few years, managed to buy a small house. It's not fancy, but I digress. We were proud at first, even bragged to friends about how we raised him right. But lately, I can't help but feel he's forgotten where he came from. He barely visits anymore. When he does, he acts distant, polite, but cold. He never invites us over, and when we ask, he says he's busy or needs space. I can't wrap my head around how our own son, whom we sacrifice so much for, can treat us like we're strangers. Meanwhile, Sam still lives at home. She's in that awkward stage where she's trying to figure out what to do next. She's had a few jobs here and there, nothing steady yet, but she's such a sweet girl. She always helps me around the house, and she never complains about much. She's grateful, which is more than I can say for Mason. I'll admit, part of me worries about her future. She's not as independent as her brother, but she has a good heart. She appreciates what people do for her. So when I look at how comfortably Mason is living now alone in a 2-bedroom house he doesn't even fully use, I can't help but feel like Sam would value it more. Last weekend, my husband and I decided to go visit Mason. We hadn't seen him in a while, and I wanted to talk some sense into him. Maybe encourage him to be more family-oriented. Maybe even suggest that Sam could stay with him for a bit to help her get on her feet. He didn't answer when we knocked, but we still had the spare key from when he first moved in and gave it to us, just in case. We never returned it, and honestly, I don't see why we should have. We're his parents. We let ourselves in and were surprised by how much space he had. The place was neat, minimal, but very bare, almost lifeless. It felt cold, like he wanted to keep everyone out. I couldn't help but start imagining how much warmer it would feel if Sam were there. Maybe she could take one of the bedrooms, make it her own. She could even help him with chores or cooking. We started looking around, moving a few things to visualize how it might work. I even took down a few photos he had of his friends because I thought it'd look nicer with family pictures instead. My husband laughed and said maybe we should start setting up one of the rooms for Sam now so Mason could see how practical it was. That's when he came home. The look on his face was something I'll never forget. Shock, then anger, then something colder than either. He demanded to know what we were doing. I tried to explain that we just wanted to talk, that we were only trying to help. He didn't want to hear it. He told us to get out immediately. When I refused, saying we were just trying to have a conversation, he called the police. I couldn't believe it. My own son calling the police on his parents. I was so embarrassed I couldn't even speak when the officers arrived. They told us to leave and said Mason could press charges for trespassing if he wanted. Thankfully, he didn't, but the humiliation was awful. We tried calling him afterward, but he blocked both of us. I texted him explaining that we were just trying to do what's best for the family, that we only wanted Sam to have a chance too. He never responded. Sam, who we thought would understand, said we crossed a line and has been quiet ever since. Now Mason is telling everyone that we broke into his house, and people are treating us like criminals. Even my own sister said we violated his boundaries. What boundaries? We're his parents. We've given him everything. If we hadn't pushed him to move out and learn independence, he wouldn't even have that house. I don't understand how he can be so ungrateful. All we wanted was to make sure both our kids were taken care of. Mason has more than enough, while Sam is still struggling. Is it really so wrong to think he could share some of what he has? It hurts to think that after all we've done, this is what we get being called monsters for caring about our family. Honestly, both of them have been disappointments in their own ways. Mason's ungrateful and Sam's lazy, but at least she knows her place. Are we really the bad guys for just trying to do what's best for our children? Update 1. When I first posted here, I really thought people would understand where my husband and I were coming from, that we were just trying to keep our family close and make sure both our kids had what they needed. But apparently, that's not how it looked to everyone else. It's been about 2 weeks since the incident at Mason's house, and it feels like our whole family has turned their backs on us. Mason actually went through with filing a police report, which to me feels like an overreaction considering we didn't steal or damage anything. We were just inside his house, trying to talk. The worst part is how cold Mason has been since. He's completely cut contact. I tried to message him through Sam, but she's been acting strange too. She told me she didn't want to get in the middle, which is ridiculous because she is the whole reason we went there in the first place. At first, I thought she was just overwhelmed, so I gave her space, but then she started avoiding us around the house, staying in her room, leaving early, barely saying a word. When I asked what was going on, she said she'd been talking to Mason. Apparently, he told her everything about the break-in, about us moving his things around, about us talking about her living there. I didn't realize how twisted he'd made it sound until she confronted us. She said we were psychotic, that we violated his privacy, and that she didn't want any part of it. It's like she's been brainwashed by him. I couldn't believe how disrespectful she was being, yelling at me in my own house like that. My husband tried to calm her down, but she stormed out and hasn't come back since. We found out later that she's been staying at Mason's place, which of course he's fine with. The same house we wanted her to have, he's now using to turn her against us. Not long after that, my sister called me out of nowhere. I thought she was checking in, but she wanted to talk about what happened. Apparently, Mason sent her screenshots of the messages I sent him, the ones where I said we went to his house to make sure Sam would be safe there, and that it makes more sense for her to use it since he doesn't need that much space. I didn't think that sounded bad, it's just practical. But my sister said it proved that we were planning to take his home. That's absurd. We would never take it. It's still in his name. We just wanted to make better use of it as a family. Now everyone's acting like we're unhinged. Mason and Sam have clearly been talking behind our backs. They're suddenly acting like best friends, united against us, when they barely used to speak before. I know this is Mason's doing. He's always been controlling, even as a child. He'd try to tell us what to do. We tried to toughen him up by making him stand on his own 2 feet, and now he's acting like that was some kind of abuse. I guess this is what happens when you give kids too much independence. They think they don't need their parents anymore. Update 2. I can't believe what Mason and Sam have done. I honestly don't even know where to start because it feels like our entire reputation, our entire family has been turned inside out. We're being treated like villains, and I can't understand how it came to this when all we did was love our children and try to guide them. Ever since that ridiculous police report, things have only gotten worse. Mason and Sam have taken things to another level. It's not just about the house anymore, they're trying to destroy us. That's not an exaggeration. A few days after my last post, one of my cousins called me, sounding awkward, saying there was a lot of talk going around in the family chat. I didn't know what she meant until she sent me screenshots. Mason had posted this long message basically airing out our entire family's private history. He said we forced him to move out at 20 and emotionally manipulated him for years. He even brought up financial things from when he was a teenager that he completely misrepresented. Yes, we used some of his savings years ago when we were struggling financially, but it wasn't like we stole it. He was still living at home rent-free, eating our food, using our utilities. That money went toward bills that benefited all of us. We always told him we'd make it up to him later, and we did in ways he never seems to acknowledge, but he turned it into some kind of sob story about being robbed by his own parents. Then Sam decided to jump in and add her piece. She posted about how she always felt like Mom treated Mason as competition. Competition? That's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. I was harder on Mason because he's a man. That's how the world works. Men have to be prepared to face life's challenges. Women need to be protected. I raised them with that balance, but somehow now that's being twisted into favoritism and neglect. They even shared old text messages, private ones between me and Mason, where I told him he needed to man up and stop expecting us to solve everything for him. I can't believe they'd make something like that public. What kind of child does that to their own mother? Now every relative, every old friend, everyone from church is whispering about us. People I've known for decades are looking at me differently, as if I've been hiding some deep secret. It's humiliating. The worst part is that they've somehow managed to get my husband involved against me too. He's always been quieter about conflict, but I guess Mason reached out to him directly. A few days later, my husband admitted that he apologized to both kids, behind my back. He said he was sorry for how things turned out, and that we should have handled things differently. I told him that he was feeding their lies, but he said he just wanted peace. Of course, that so-called peace didn't last because Sam took screenshots of his apology and posted them to the family group chat. Everyone saw it. Everyone saw my husband admitting fault while I looked like the only one still refusing to take responsibility. Now I'm painted as some kind of narcissist who can't admit when she's wrong. It's been absolute chaos since then. My phone hasn't stopped buzzing, relatives demanding my side of the story, people telling me I should apologize to Mason, to Sam, to heal the family. I keep saying that we did what any responsible parents would have done, but no one wants to hear it. Everyone's too busy fawning over the kids, calling them brave for standing up to us. Even at church, I can feel the change. One of the women I've known for years pulled me aside last Sunday and said she was praying for our reconciliation. She said it like she pitied me. I wanted to tell her that this isn't reconciliation, it's manipulation. My own children have turned into strangers, and the entire community is patting them on the back for it. It's like no one cares about what we sacrificed. When Mason was growing up, we worked ourselves to the bone to keep a roof over his head. When Sam was in college, we covered her tuition. But now, all people see are the parts the kids conveniently highlighted: Mason's independence, Sam's supposed trauma, all while ignoring everything we gave up for them. I keep telling my husband we need to set the record straight, but he's scared of making things worse. He says it's time to let them have their say. That's easy for him to say when he's not the one being attacked. He doesn't realize how much damage their words are doing. I've already been removed from the family group chat, and I found out through my sister that they've created a new one without us. Apparently, everyone's supporting the kids. And Sam, my own daughter, posted on Facebook that she's finally done being afraid of her parents. I stared at that line for a long time. Afraid? I've never laid a hand on her. Never yelled the way my own parents used to yell at me. I gave her everything she wanted, everything she needed, and this is how she repays us. I tried messaging her privately, but she left me on read. Mason didn't even bother replying. It's like they've both decided we don't exist anymore. The betrayal stings in ways I can't explain. Update 3. It's hard to even describe what happened last weekend, but we were invited to what my sister called a family discussion. She said Mason and Sam had something important to share and wanted to clear the air. I'll admit, I felt hopeful. Maybe they'd finally realized how ridiculous they'd been. Maybe they wanted to fix things. My husband was hesitant. He said it sounded like a setup, but I told him we couldn't just hide forever. We had to show everyone we weren't the monsters our children were making us out to be. When we arrived at my sister's house, the first thing I noticed was that everyone was already there. Siblings, cousins, even a couple of church friends. Mason and Sam were sitting together on one side of the room. They both looked composed. That should have been my first warning. They weren't angry. They weren't emotional. They were calm. Too calm. My sister started by saying something about transparency and accountability. Then Mason stood up and said he'd compiled some things to help everyone understand the pattern of behavior. He actually had a binder, a thick one, and printed pages. He said he and Sam had organized evidence of how my husband and I had hurt and manipulated them over the years. I laughed at first. I thought it was some kind of joke. But then he started reading. He brought up the messages from when we told him to move out. He said I'd thrown him out to prove a point, that we'd cut him off financially and emotionally, and that we'd weaponized responsibility. Then he passed around copies of texts I sent at the time saying he needed to learn to be a man and that no real woman wants a dependent man. Everyone was staring at me like I was some kind of dictator. Then Sam spoke. She talked about how we controlled her choices, how we kept her dependent and made her feel incapable. She said I used Mason's success to guilt her into staying home. She even had old voicemails me telling her she wasn't ready to live alone, that she'd end up like those girls on the news. She played them in front of everyone. I felt like the walls were closing in. I tried to speak up, to explain that I was protecting her, that a mother has every right to keep her daughter safe, but they wouldn't let me. My sister told me to just listen. Then Mason moved on to what he called the incident, the house. He laid it all out like a courtroom presentation, how we used the spare key, how we rearranged his belongings, how we had texted about making space for Sam. He even had screenshots of the messages I'd sent to my husband about changing the locks while Mason was away. My stomach dropped when I realized he'd gotten those from my husband's phone. I looked at my husband, but he just stared at the floor. Mason said that what we did wasn't love, it was control disguised as care. He said we had violated every boundary a parent should respect. Then Sam said she finally understood that family isn't about obedience, it's about respect. Everyone started nodding like they were in a therapy session. I lost it. I told them all they were brainwashed, that they had no idea what it's like to be a parent who sacrifices everything only to be spat on in return. I said we were trying to hold our family together while they were tearing it apart. But no one listened. My sister told me to calm down, and one of my cousins said maybe I should take accountability. That word accountability has become their favorite weapon. When I looked around the room, every single person had turned against us. People who used to call me for advice, people I'd babysat for, people who used to praise me for raising strong kids, all of them were siding with Mason and Sam. Even my husband wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked ashamed. Then Mason said the words, "I'll never forget. You're not welcome in our lives anymore, either of you." It felt like someone punched me. I told him he couldn't talk to me that way, that I was his mother. But he just repeated it, word for word, calm and steady. Sam nodded beside him, eyes full of tears, and said, "We're done." I tried to appeal to my sister, but she just said it was for the best. That they needed peace. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I've been the glue in this family for decades, and now they're all pretending I'm the problem. When I finally realized no one was on our side, I stood up and told them they were all ungrateful, that one day they'd see what happens when family loyalty dies. My husband followed me out without saying a word. Since that day, not a single person has reached out. We've been removed from every group chat, blocked on social media. Even my church friends stopped returning my calls. It's like Mason and Sam rewrote history, and everyone else decided to go along with it. My husband barely talks anymore. He spends most of his time in the garage or outside. I think he's ashamed of how public everything became. Every time I bring up the kids, he changes the subject. I know what he's thinking, that we pushed too hard, but if we hadn't, where would they be now? Mason would still be lazy, living off us, and Sam would be lost. Everything we did was to make them better. Final update. It's been almost a year since everything happened, and at this point, I've stopped waiting for a phone call or a message that will never come. I never imagined things would end up like this. People talk about family breakups like they're sudden, like one big explosion tears everything apart. But the truth is, it's quieter than that. It's slow. One by one, people stop talking to you, stop inviting you, stop seeing you as someone worth forgiving. Mason and Sam haven't spoken to us since that family meeting. They made it clear that there's no going back, and they've stuck to it. I used to tell myself it was just a phase, that they'd calm down once they realized we were only trying to help, but it's clear now that they've built their lives without us. We still live in the same house. It's too quiet these days. My husband doesn't say much anymore, and when he does, it's usually about the usual. He used to defend me when people said I was too controlling, but now he barely looks me in the eye when Mason or Sam's names come up. I think he's ashamed of how everything turned out, but he won't admit it. Sometimes I catch him scrolling through Mason's work page or Sam's photos online. He never likes them or comments, just looks and closes the screen quickly when I walk in. From what I've gathered, Mason got engaged a few months ago. They posted a picture in front of a new house bigger than the one he had before. It looked freshly renovated, neat, perfect. He looked happy. I recognized the smile, but not the person behind it. Sam finished her degree and apparently has her own apartment now. She and Mason still see each other all the time. Someone sent me a video of them at a family barbecue. My own siblings were there, laughing with them like nothing ever happened. No one invited us, of course. I guess they decided it's easier to pretend we never existed than to deal with the tension. We've been left out of every event since last year. Birthdays, holidays, everything. I sent Christmas cards last December, trying to extend some kind of olive branch, but none of them were acknowledged, not even returned. It's like they went into a black hole. I did try to show up once at my niece's wedding. I told myself it was a family event and that we had just as much right to be there as anyone else. But when we arrived, people turned their heads. Some didn't even make eye contact. Halfway through the reception, one of my brothers pulled us aside and said it would be best if we left. He said Mason and Sam were uncomfortable. I didn't argue. We left quietly. My husband didn't say a word the whole drive home. Since then, we've stopped trying. There's only so many times you can knock on a door before you realize it's never going to open again.